Hello everyone, it's me, Glogart13vids, and today I'm going to be doing a commentary on Mike. You know, the guy who basically took over James Nintendo Nerd's channel after James Rolfe was done with his e-begging and decided to start making that AVGN movie.
Taken over? Dude, the James Nintendo Nerd channel was never solely James's channel. Mike managed the channel pretty much from the beginning. He's worked with James to make the AVGN episodes. Why the fuck shouldn't he use it? It's his channel too.
After he started making the movie, there's almost been no AVGN episodes or any of that stuff. Instead, several things have been happened.
Could we hear that again, please?
Several things have been happened.
Several things have been happened. There are so many internet meme jokes I can make about that, but I think I'll go with this instead. I just got through commentating on a kid with poor writing skills. Now I'm commentating on a kid with poor speaking skills. It never ends.
First off, filler content is mostly being uploaded, you know, like them making commentaries their own videos, or them, or old videos of like James Rolfe, like the one of him doing the other stuff.
You know, like that fucking stuff with the thing and the script! Edit! I'm sorry to sound like every broken record in the commentary community, but I can't help it. This kid is just... Okay, I'll try and lay off the bad speech patterns and focus instead on his points. Think about this for a second. James and Mike are trying to give the fans some new content. Something to hold them over while they make the movie, and they're too busy to make regular videos. And frankly, as video producers, that's the best thing they could do in this situation. And whether you enjoy this content or not, well, would you rather have nothing? 'Cause I sure as hell wouldn't.
As like in college or something, but this video is him reviewing a game, and it's mostly dull and unfunny until the end where he basically messes up. So let's start this video off, shall we?
Hey, I was playing some Game Boy games and I came across this Simpsons game called Bart and the Beanstalk. It's a really stupid concept, but let's take a quick look. On the first stage, you progress upward through the beanstalk while collecting coins. Doing this is incredibly hard, though, because of the terrible controls. There's bugs that are crawling along the ground, and you can kill them with 2 shots from your slingshot, but it's easier said than done. You'll fire your first shot, but the slingshot fires so slow that by the time you get off the second shot, the beetle will have already hurt you, and you lose energy. This happens continually throughout the board, which makes it difficult to progress. Why does the slingshot have to be so delayed?
And here we come to the first recurring problem, the joke delivery. When you deliver jokes, it doesn't sound funny at all. It sounds like, why does this have to be like so-and-so? I mean, that's how you deliver the joke. You don't deliver it like the AVGN does at all. And in the end, it's simply not entertaining or funny at all.
Maybe because that wasn't a joke. He was making a legitimate point about how delayed the controls were. If that qualifies as a joke to you, you need to learn what comedy is.
And the shots that you fire don't go far enough. It goes like 1 foot and then it disappears. Imagine if you threw a tennis ball at somebody, but as soon as it left your hand, it disappeared into a black hole. Or maybe it's like the transporter gun on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where the bullets get transported to a faraway land. Yeah, that's it. Bart shoots the slingshot, and the projectile ends up killing the Joker in Batman on NES.
Quick question. Was that supposed to be funny? Because if that was supposed to be funny, then you did pretty bad at making a joke. I mean, seriously, references aren't jokes, and neither is your joke delivery properly executed either.
Well, I don't know about you, but I actually thought that was pretty funny. Also, you're one to talk about being deadpan, kid. Jesus Christ, at least when I make a commentary, I try to sound like I give 2 shits. You sound like you're fucking baked, which probably explains why you slurred delivery there.
At first I thought this game would be unoriginal with the whole beanstalk theme, but now that I've seen that they've introduced transporter slingshots, I'm impressed. And sometimes you'll fire the first shot at the beetle and hit it, but then it moves off screen. You expect it to come back again so you can land your second hit and kill it, but it never comes back. So naturally, I assumed it was dead or just gone because it went off the screen. So I keep walking, and it's back, so I had no choice but to get hit. The next thing that's too hard is...
Hold on, did you say the next thing that's too hard? If you're saying it like that, that's just making it sound like you absolutely suck at the game, no matter if you're playing the worst game in the world.
No it doesn't. He's talking about how the controls work in the game and how they make it nearly impossible to avoid getting hit, especially with cheap damage. I'd say yes, that makes the game unfairly difficult. What, are people not allowed to say that a game is too hard if it's too hard for unjust reasons?
There are other words you could use to describe it, like cheap, or you could talk about how much this game sucks, like the VGN did as far as I remember. And by the way, just to let you know, I'm going to skip ahead in this review because it's so boring. It just involves him trying to talk about stuff, but it's not funny nor entertaining in any way. So I'm just going to skip it. Just save you the pain.
Now that is irony!
Seriously, kid, you sound like you're half asleep, there's no emotion in your voice whatsoever, and Mike is too boring for you?
It was Night of the Treehouse Horror on Game Boy Color. Now before I go on, you might be wondering how I'm recording all these handheld games.
I'm guessing not many people care, or they just assume it's an emulator, but oh well.
What's wrong with explaining how he captures footage? I personally think that adds a bit of professionalism to the review, and maybe, just maybe, he's trying to encourage future reviewers or Let's Players? I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but still.
For the regular Game Boy games, I just use the Super Game Boy, and for games like Night of the Treehouse, which was a Game Boy Color game, I used the Game Boy Player, which was an attachment that goes on the bottom of the GameCube. I ran into a problem though, the game doesn't seem to load. I tried some other games that I own, and they all work fine, so I know the system is okay.
So, did you try putting the game in any other systems, like an SP?
I think it's pretty clear that he has. He's trying to explain how to record footage for a review without using an emulator, and that was on topic with what he was saying, since he was talking about recording footage on the TV. Also, what's the point? If it doesn't work on a system that's in working order according to him, why would it work on another one?
So I figured the battery inside the game must be dead.
I think the game you're trying to fix doesn't have a battery. Plus, if the battery were actually bad, you wouldn't be able to save. Please do research before you make another video.
Yes, it does. Most cartridge games with a save feature, including ones as far back as the NES, had a battery so that it could record save data. Game Boy Color games have these too, the battery's just a lot smaller. And it's clear that it's not working if the game itself refuses to work. But you know what's funny? He contradicts himself on this point later on.
I would just open it up real quick and replace the battery, but here's the problem. The screw on the back of the Game Boy Color games requires a very special screwdriver that I don't have.
Then why don't you, buy one, or just get another copy of the game? Last time I checked, the game was only a few bucks on Amazon, so it's not really that hard to find. It's not like you've got, some rare game.
You would have a point if this weren't just Mike looking at the Simpsons games he happens to own. And, as we'll see in the video, he's demonstrating why he owns this game and can't review it.
But I have a solution. Now, this next part I definitely do not recommend doing at home.
Especially not if you're Mike. Because if you're Mike, as you can see, it didn't work.
That's not funny.
I read that there's a trick that can be done to open a Game Boy Color without having that special tool. I took an ordinary Bic pen and I lit the end of it on fire until it started to melt. Then I quickly stuck the tip of the pen into the hole so that the plastic would melt around the screw, thus forming my own homemade tool. Then I let it sit and harden for a while and cool off. But here's the thing, when I eventually went back again to use my newly formed tool to open the game, it didn't work.
Kids, don't make your screwdrivers out of Bic pens, or else it won't work.
I got nothing to say to that. I have never heard someone fail so hard at pwning someone in song.
The plastic started to chip away and it just wouldn't unscrew the game. So don't even bother trying this, because it doesn't even work.
Or You could have just used other methods on the internet. On the internet, there are tutorials on how to use pliers to open a Game Boy cartridge. In fact, that's what I've done to repair mine. But you know nothing about gaming, so there.
How does he not know anything about gaming? If anything, apparently this method has worked in the past, it just didn't work on this game. And chances are, if he had tried different methods, you'd accuse him of wasting your time.
Well, I did everything I could to get this damn thing to work, and of course this was the one Simpsons game that I really wanted to play, too.
And let's not forget, kids, if your game doesn't read, all you need is rubbing alcohol and Q-tips. But this guy doesn't know that.
Yeah, he knows nothing about it. He only helped write the Game Glitches video where James talked about the Q-tip remedy you mentioned. Oh, but that doesn't count, apparently.
Because it was a horror-themed game. Later I found out that the battery actually only has to do with saving the game, so it looks like my copy of the game is broken.
Then why did you say that earlier it was the battery? Turns out, that whole thing was utterly pointless.
He's trying to explain why he can't review the game as previously stated. Oh, and you're one to top, mister. The batteries only have to do with saving, and therefore it must be working properly.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Why not just use an emulator? Well, one of the reasons I even like to do these reviews is to relive the past, by playing the games the same way I did when they were released. Using an emulator would take the fun out of it for me.
Then why don't you just play it on a Game Boy or something, you know, like a Game Boy Advance SP? Or if you really want to play it the way it was meant to be, then play it on one of those.
It doesn't fucking work. How can you play a game on any system, regardless of age, if it doesn't work? People, you have to try to be this stupid.
And even then, newer emulators are closer to the real hardware than they were before. And one last thing. I know you're pulling the no ROMs excuse, but then again, the AVGNs used ROMs before. Here's proof.
Like my Sega CD video, keep in mind, I'm limited to how many games I can review. I'm aware that I'm leaving out popular ones such as Snatcher on the Sega CD and Knuckles Chaotix on the 32X. But remember, if I don't have the game, I can't review it. The world needs to know about Ninja Baseball Batman. But right now, the only way to play it is on an emulator. Or if you happen to have access to one of the arcade units.
Hey, if the AVGN can use emulators, so can you. And just for the record, yes, there is a video of the actual PCB being played on YouTube. There are actually PCBs of this, and there are super guns. If you really want to be a purist, just get a super gun AVGN. But that's off topic.
Did you even watch the video? Just because James had to use ROMs in order to play one game, which is impossible to find otherwise, that means that Mike's no ROMs excuse is invalid. I'm just going to leave that where it is and keep going.
Back to the game review itself.
So, all in all, these Simpsons games are just not for me.
All in all, this was just a bad review. I skipped out most of it because most of it was basically him basically playing the game and not really knowing much about it, and then also throwing in a bunch of unfunny jokes that are not funny at all. And then later on, he basically demonstrates his lack of knowledge, and then basically contradicts himself and goes on way too long. And then says emulators are crappy in the end is an excuse, even though he could probably get away with it if the AVGN can.
No, he did not say that. He said that he wanted to play the games legitimately in order to play them like they were played in the past. In other words, he chooses to play them this way out of personal taste, not because he says emulators are bad.
I mean, he does have people who are going to blindly thumbs up everything he does. Look at the AVGN. There are people who are like, Mike's good. Don't talk bad about Mike. And speaking of which is for you, Mike, I understand. I think you should make a new channel. And when you make the new channel, don't delete comments or flag people down who make videos about you, because that's what you've been doing. Just look at the Archfiend. He's posted links to re-uploads of your terrible Elmo and Grouchland review, and what do? You just flag it down like a pussy.
I've heard about this situation, and honestly, I've said all I have to say on the situation between Mike and the Archfiend. I'm ending this video now. But I think we can take 3 things from this video. Number 1. When you're going to make a commentary, don't get stoned before you do it. Number 2. When you're calling someone's reviews boring, try not to be more boring than they are. And number 3, pay attention!
Hello everyone, this is the Archfiend. This is, I would say, the one video that I've contemplated making the most. And I've thought a lot about it recently. I even addressed it in my last live show. And I even said I wasn't going to make a video about it, but the more I've thought about things here, the more I just felt it necessary just to voice my opinion, just to say what I got to say, and just above all else, when have I kept my mouth shut about something that I wanted to talk about so vehemently?
And oh, how I wish you would have.
And I feel like I would just be doing myself an injustice for just whatever this YouTube channel is here for me. Just this encapsulation of my life and time, of all these times I've been making videos and been on here watching other people's videos and all that good shit. Now, before I get into the thick of things and before I burn this bridge to the ground, and trust me, I'm going to burn this fucking bridge to the ground, I'm going to piss on its ashes, I gotta say, without James Rolfe and the Angry Video Game Nerd being in existence here on YouTube, I don't know if I would be here on YouTube. I have to personally acknowledge that he is, and that character in those videos that the James Nintendo Nerd channel had made, were the one single catalyst that got me interested in this website, that made me want to subscribe to a channel. Now granted, I had my account here before James even started making videos. In fact, James and I created our channels 2 days apart from each other. But I just kind of created an account here to have an account here at the time. I wasn't like an aspiring filmmaker or anything like that. But once I got to seeing James's videos, that just wanting to come back to see what he does next, that entity, if you will, was there. And that's what just really got me hooked into YouTube and really got me into seeing other people's videos and wanting to see what they make next and all that other shit.
Which is why I'm going to throw a bunch of insane claims against him that are based on pretty much nothing but speculation. Oh, you think I'm kidding? Just keep watching.
Now, as of recently, James has done a number of things that I consider to be unethical, just bastard things to do, for lack of a better term, and a number of other things, but I can't keep quiet about this shit anymore. I've, like I said on my live video, gave my thoughts about it, and I know people are going to be upset with some of the things I have to say. I know some people are going to have clouded judgment towards the things I have to say.
And by clouded judgment, I mean people that disagree with me. For I am the Archfiend, and my word is law.
I know this video is probably going to get long, drawn out, and boring. People unsubscribe from my channel for this. So be it. But I'm going to speak my mind, and goddamn if I've ever shut my mouth before when I wanted to talk about something. So, this is going to be no different. James, the Angry Video Game Nerd, is making a movie. A full-length feature film, as he puts it. And recently, about a month ago, he opened up an account on a donations website where there's like a tiered system for how much you donate. You could get what's called a gift back. Like, the gifts range, or the amounts range from $5 up to $20,000 donations. Now, he hasn't got any $20,000 donations, but he has gotten a couple of $1,000 donations to finance this movie. It has a goal, if you will, of receiving $75,000, of which he's already got over, I think it was like 58,000 last I checked earlier today. So he's almost reached his goal, and obviously he has a loyal fan base that is willing to donate him money.
Well, it sounds like any other Kickstarter project so far. In fact, a guy that I follow, Captain Osaka, who writes and illustrates the Double K Gurren Lagann fan comic, actually started a similar project recently, though I missed donating to it. And from the research I've done, he did pretty much the same thing James did, giving different gifts based on the amount of donations each individual donor gives. Now, granted, Captain Osaka asked for less money than James, but then again, And this is a huge understatement. Movies cost a ton of money to make. As someone who's only done amateur film work, I've prepared budgets for bigger projects than my own, and the amount of expenses involved in making this movie, well, I can only imagine. You have to pay for gas, you have to pay the actors, you have to pay the extras, you have to pay to maintain the equipment, you have to pay for copyright if anything showed up in the movie that was owned by another company, which is pretty much unavoidable. You'd have to pay for catering. The list goes on. And from what James said, he was previously going to be relying on other organizations to help with the funds, but thanks to the money he received, the money that his fans cared enough to donate, he can basically have complete creative control of this project. Something that most directors only dream of. So, what's the problem?
Now, I'm not going to harp so much on the e-begging part, because I know you guys know I attack people like the Amazing Atheist for being just a shitbag e-beggar and all that. You know what? That's fine, because there's a number of filmmakers that have financed their films, and especially films that they're just like, trying to make it in the business. Specifically, a lot of documentaries that have been made, a lot of good documentaries, have financed themselves through donations. But mainly in the filmmaking industry, you're supposed to take a risk. And that risk is supposed to be based on money you take out from a bank. That is considered to be the more ethical way of doing things. James decided to go the other route and get the money from his fans to finance this film. Now, that's all well and good. The only major issue I have, and like I said, e-beg your ass off with it. Don't really care about that, James. What I do have a problem with is, why do people have this notion that this movie is going to absolutely be made? There is absolutely zero guarantees that will tell you this movie is absolutely going to be made. He's getting thousands upon thousands of dollars from his fans to finance a film that is simply in pre-production at this point. If the film doesn't get made, does he have a contingency plan for getting the money back? No. More than likely, you're all going to be screwed if you donate it to him and this film doesn't see the light of day.
First point, as people in your comments have pointed out, Archie, James never forced people to donate. Like I said, he had several organizations to fall back on, or hey, like you said, if he had needed to, which he might have, he would have gone to them instead, or the bank, but he didn't want to do that, as being involved with an organization basically means that you have to play by that organization's rules. Second point, going off of my first point, do you think that these people are expecting their money back? They gave their money voluntarily to James. And when you donate your money voluntarily, you rarely expect that you're going to get it back. These people knew what they were getting into. The AVGN's fanboys are smarter than you give them credit for. And thirdly, wow. For someone who claims to take such inspiration from James, for someone who values him as a filmmaker and as a user, do you really think that he's such a poor businessman that he's not going to give these people their money back if the movie fails, which, again, is a worst-case scenario? I'm pretty sure that James is fully aware of the difficulties he will be facing, and while yes, I've never met him personally, this guy has made several videos where he's talked about how much he loves movies and the art of making them. And in that one video, The Dragon in My Dreams, he pretty much bared his soul to his audience. I don't care if you call me a fanboy for this. If there's one user on here that I believe is worth trusting, it's James. And again, you're only guessing that this film will fall apart. I have no proof that it'll go through, but he has no proof that it won't. We could go back and forth on this all day, but we'll never get anywhere until the movie is made or not made. At this point, Archie, you're only going off speculation.
Granted, he wants to make this be a feature-length film that gets into theaters. That's not exactly that easy to do, even though everyone wants to think he has, millions of fans that are going to support him. Trust me, there's been bigger flops in Hollywood that have had twice the amount of fans that James has. Now, getting into the whole thing, like I said, e-beg your ass off. That's kind of what I expected from you, but I don't see an issue with that. What I do see an issue with is when you lay out all the cards on the table and you see what James has and what he's done, and you see his YouTube channel now and the recent change where he got a YouTube partnership, you have to ask yourselves, why is he asking for money in the first place? Now, I'm not going to claim to be his personal accountant and know what he makes to a T, but are we seriously supposed to sit here and believe that he's this really big, like, struggling filmmaker that doesn't have any money to get his project off the ground? Folks, his channel on YouTube just got a YouTube partnership. Channels that are his size and that get his amount of viewership earn anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 a year.
Dude, from a movie-making standpoint, that is peanuts. And like you said, if it takes a year to make that amount, here, let me crunch some numbers for you. According to thenumbers.com, the average budget of a major studio movie was about $65 million when the MPAA stopped tracking it in 2006, and it's risen since then, not just due to the economy, but the cost it makes to actually make a movie that impresses an increasingly cynical audience. The most expensive film commonly costs more than $200 million to make now. But okay, you say, who's to say James's film will cost that much, especially if it's an AVGN movie? Well, honestly, I'd still say that due to the economy alone, he's going to need a few million. So I'd say if you added a couple of zeros to that $300,000 figure, if he indeed makes that much from his YouTube partnership, that would probably be about right. So by that estimation, James would only have to wait a mere 100 years to earn that money, by which time the economy may have fallen even farther. And I don't know about you, but I want this movie to be made before James dies of old age.
He has a website, of which the traffic is public knowledge. You can search any one of numerous websites out there that give you website traffic and give you a rough estimate of what ad revenue generates off those websites. A website like Cinemassacre.com is making an estimated $200 to $500 in ad revenue a day. Every single day. That's just from physical ads being seen on the website.
Let's see, 500 times 365 equals about $182,500 a year. You know what? Let's keep track of just how much he earns according to Archie's estimate. So far James earns, at the most, $482,500 a year.
James has a Blip TV account, which is on his website that hosts all the videos you see on his website. Every single one of his videos has both pop-up ads and pre-roll ads on them. That is a whole different avenue of income.
That's exactly the system I have on my reviews. Now my reviews get, on average, 500 views, with one review each week, and for that I make about $30 a month from ad revenue, which is about $360 a year, and that's only because I make a new review pretty much every week, and it averages out due to the fact that I don't make reviews during the summer. So let's just say that James's Blip account earns about 3 million views per month, and proportionally, since I get about 2,000 per month, he makes 1,500 times as much as me, and that's only because his review schedule these days is much more sporadic than mine, so I think that's about right. So that's about $500,000 a year, since Blip doesn't pay that well. So according to him, we now have about $982,500 per year, and that's a high estimate. It sounds like a lot, but when you think about how much it costs to make a movie, it isn't. Which pretty much sums up the problem with this video. The Archfiend knows almost nothing about how much it costs to make a movie.
James has a partnership with Screw Attack, where they pay him to make Angry Video Game Nerd episodes. James makes money from SpikeTV.com, where he makes a number of projects for them at any given time of year. James sells numerous pieces of merchandise through ScrewAttack.com. Sure, he gets screwed over a little bit, pun intended, by Screw Attack. He still makes money off of that nonetheless. Money that adds up to thousands of dollars a year. He sells DVDs, t-shirts, hats, all that stuff that he gets a cut of.
Okay, let's say he gets about $100,000 per year each from those. And we've only just cracked $1 million, or more specifically, $1,282,500 in a year. Do you see where the problem lies yet? Even if we factor in what James gets from his job, whatever that might be in real life, don't forget that he has a family to support as well, so I'd say he doesn't get to save up much more than that. Or if he did, without these donations, he would have to wait years before he could get the money to even think about starting to make this movie. Jesus, the further I go into this, the more I realize how slim my chances are of making it in Hollywood as a writer.
James is by no means a poor man. If he is a poor man, then he's just terrible with money. And for that, I'd have to say, why do we, the fans, have to pick up the tab for you if you're irresponsible with your money or you just, haven't known how to handle your money? Because from the looks of things, you have more than a few pennies to your name. Let's not overlook the eBaying. Remember that, people? I think he still does it to this day. Correct me if I'm wrong. But putting the little, extra game cartridges he has and he'll, autograph them or an extra set piece or whatever, he's made thousands of dollars selling his little extra tchotchkes on eBay.
And he has spent thousands of dollars when he was still doing this on an amateur level. Good gravy, have you seen how much he spent on that CDI series alone? And gaming is an expensive hobby, especially retro gaming. I'm pretty sure he collects some of those games for fun alone, but if we took those out, he still has to pay for everything he uses when he makes the AVGN episodes, the games and systems especially. I think that what he sells just makes up for what he spends on the reviews, and that's not even going into how much more it would take to fund the movie.
So, now he wants to get the Angry Video Game Nerd movie off, and he wants to get it in full production here. He's saying he's buying new cameras and everything and all this other stuff, and that's all well and good, and I understand that you want to make the movie look better and everything, but I gotta ask everyone who's a fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd, what are your favorite episodes of the Angry Video Game Nerd? I've talked to a number of people that are AVGN fans and former fans like myself, and I'd say we'd all agree stuff from around the 2007-2008 era, the very early on reviews, the stuff that, didn't have to, jerk off on the camera and show a billion game collection behind him. Stuff that was modest, shot with minimal special effects, shot with just low-grade cameras, stuff that wasn't in high definition, stuff that was just him being a character, reviewing the game, and that was it. Stuff that didn't have to have the peripheral characters, like the Great Glitch Gremlin, like the Cowardly Lion, like shit like that. Stuff where when he started getting into the theatrics and the overacting and adding the dialogue that had nothing to do with the game and skits and scenarios, fans out there unanimously agree that that stuff is not the better versions of James. It's the stuff that was just the nuts and bolts, him as the character, being angry, showing the game, reviewing it, save all that other drama and acting for a different project. So, James wants to make this movie look better by buying better equipment. He wants to hire other actors. He wants to get all dramatic with it. He's got, just a full, all-out script and all that, and more the power to him. James, why would your fans give a shit about how good the movie looked? About how many extra actors there are? About whether or not the Glitch Gremlin's going to be in it and a number of other peripheral characters that you've created throughout time? Seriously, we would be fine as fans if you just used the same camcorders you used in your first 2 seasons of your videos on the Angry Video Game Nerd.
Archie, stop speaking as if you're speaking for everyone. Okay, going back to me, since I want to give you a concrete example to compare this to, I used to film my reviews with a webcam. That cost me $20, and frankly it looked like shit, but for some reason people were fine with it. I'm pretty sure that James might feel the same way about his old reviews, because hey, every artist is their own worst critic, so he's going to do what I did and buy a new camera, just like the one I'm recording this audio with, and by extension the one I film my reviews with. It's a Sony Handycam, and it's a small camera, but it's a freaking powerhouse. The video quality is better, the audio quality is better, and I think my fans would agree. And you know how much this camera cost me for a good quality used one on eBay? $250. And I might add, I don't have a job, so I had to save up my money for it, and was it worth it? I believe so, since my reviews are higher quality in terms of video and audio than my old ones. But the difference between me and James is that my reviews are not filmed as a theatrically released movie. Right now, where I go to college, there's a camera that the news crew of this school that I'm part of uses. This is something that gets put on TV, so it's about as low grade as a professional cinematography camera can get. And you know how much that costs? Around $200,000. And like I said, that's low grade. So in order to make a movie, I'd say a high grade professional camera would go for around $500,000. And that's being generous. To top it all off, you don't ever use just a camera. You need a camera stand, microphones, mic stands or lavalier mics, and that's basic cinematography right there. So I'd say one camera, and all the accessories packed with it, including a camera crew, would be about $1 million. And you never use just one camera to make a professionally made movie. James wants to give the people what they want, and if he's going to make this movie, then by all means he should do it right. Do you really think that people want to shell out their money, even if it's just for a theater ticket, to see a video that looks like it was taken off YouTube and stretched so the aspect ratio could fit the screen? I didn't fucking think so.
But he wants to invest all this money to make it look better. Why? The look of your show isn't what drew people in and built your fan base. It was you as the character. It was you being the angry character. What good camera you have pointing at you is moot.
No, it's not. Especially if he wants to get this a theatrical release. Like you said, it'd be an extremely difficult process, and if he brought them footage that looked like his old reviews, he'd be laughed out of the theater.
People could care less. I mean, Jesus, it's like when Jackass went from the TV show to their first movie. Look at the types of shitty cameras they were using. Did they have to bust out and use special effects and everything? In fact, look at the end of the first Jackass movie. It almost just completely stands out, and it's like almost unhumorous in comparison to the rest of the film. Because they wanted to make it look like, this big sellout project, and that's what they're doing. They're Hollywood now. They had to make this big Hollywood production. No, they kept the movie simple. They kept it true to their roots, and they kept it to the standard that won their fans over. James keeps straying away from this. More and more he gets into these angry video game nerd episodes.
So, in other words, because you're nostalgic for the old AVGN episodes and you don't like the new ones, you think that because this movie is going to be more professionally done than his amateur reviews on YouTube, which by simple logic will cost more money than an amateur film, you're attacking James over asking for money, which is something he needs to get this done. This leap in logic just astounds me.
And I see the comments. I see the fans that are writing to me too as well, because they think I'm a big AVGN fanboy because I've attacked the irate gamer a number of times. But I'll tell you what, man. This movie, and just James as a video reviewer and all this other stuff, I hate to be so masochistic about it, but I hope this fails. I hope he falls flat on his face. I hope the movie falls flat on its face. And like I said, people, there's no guarantee this movie's even ever going to get made. And all you people that donated, I feel bad for you. Well, then again, people that are willing to donate, they take the risk, so, buyer beware.
And you just made the entire video pointless. Bravo, man, bravo. Yes, they took the risk, they knew what they were doing, and thus it really doesn't matter what you've said, or even if the movie fails, because they did it anyway.
Even though you're not really buying anything per se. Yeah, I hope this movie fails. For the one main reason that James, with all the karma he's whipping up, all the fate, all the destiny, all this other stuff, he deserves to have it fail. And this is someone who's been a long-time fan of James for a number of years. Someone who's talked to Mike Matei on a number of occasions. And don't worry, I posted all the conversations I had with Mike on my website in case anyone wants to see them and see what a dickbag that asshole is.
The irony of that coming from you is just astonishing, considering how much you've been acting in this video.
But anyway, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, and maybe a lot of people will like this, who knows. I know this is going to be a mixed reaction regardless, and I know there's a number of fanboys out there that are going to flame the shit out of me, but such is the life of this channel here on YouTube for me. So, James, I just got to say, as someone who's been a longtime fan, who's been a person who's bought a lot of your merchandise and all that good shit, I can't support you. I can't support you in the least anymore. I love that your channel now on YouTube, once money got involved, you get the pictures, the banner on top, the sidebar picture with the subscribe, and you got the annotations for subscribe and everything like that. And I know people are going to be like, well, Mike Matei's in charge of that, so, you know, it's not James. I don't give a shit. Anything that happens in James's name is James's responsibility. And the fact, and this in your YouTube channel is a perfect example of what you are now. A money grubber. All those annotations asking for subscriptions now, all those pictures, like none of that existed before. Granted, I know the pictures on this YouTube channel couldn't exist before his partnership. But those annotations now, begging for subscriptions and all that, the fact that they didn't exist until your YouTube channel could start making money speaks volumes of your character, James.
Oh, look. You make money off your videos, too. Including this one. Yes, how dare James make money, which, judging from the figures you've estimated and I've expanded upon, he's going to need a lot more of in order to get this movie off the ground. Archfiend, you're an idiot. And a hypocrite.
And you are a money-grubbing piece of shit. I hope your movie crashes and burns. I hope it never makes it to any silver screen. And you know what? Just because you have a few fans here on the internet doesn't mean anyone's going to be willing to pay to see that shit in the theater. Great, you're going to review E.T. Guess what? The Irate Gamer beat you to that. How do you like them apples? Have a great day, everyone.
Oh, God, that was painful to sit through. So, in conclusion, I think you can see why this was the video that made me unsubscribe from the Archfiend. He clearly has no idea how much it costs to make a movie, and even if the numbers I found were inaccurate, as a movie fan, I can definitely say that it takes more than James makes off the AVGN videos. The fact that you think people would actually pay money to see a video in theaters that looks like it should be off of YouTube is insulting to not only your audience's intelligence, but insulting to James. Because I, for one, think that given how much the man cares about the art of filmmaking, he would never let his audience just settle for that. And even then, James didn't make anyone pay him. Again, he could have gone to those other organizations he mentioned in that video he released after he saw how much people donated, but no. These people, these fanboys as you call them, cared enough to give their hard-earned cash to give James creative control of this movie, and to get a gift from him in return, but that's beside the point. And the fact that because you're angry at James for some extremely ill-founded reasons and hope that this movie goes bankrupt and that people lose their money because of it sickens me. And it would even if I wasn't a fan of James. So call me an idiot, call me a fanboy, but I don't care what you say anymore. And if this movie gets made, because hey, it could fall through, but if it gets made, I know I'm still buying a ticket, regardless of the hatred you have for the idea.
Blockbuster, an organization once known for having nationwide rental stores, places where people could walk around and browse what kind of movies and games they had. It was something that was homey and friendly.
Provided that you lived near one and thus going there would not be a huge ordeal for you. For me, it usually was. I don't know about you, but back when video stores were still in operation, my family hated using them because of the fact that both my parents had to work, which made it more difficult when they were the ones to return the movies after we were finished with them. And if they forgot, guess what? We had late fees to deal with. In fact, I think there are still a couple of movies that we actually lost completely and we had to pay for as a result.
Video arcades, places where citizens could waltz around and try out what game cabinets were available, and use a claw machine filled with toys.
Provided you have enough quarters to maintain playing. Remember, even if you wanted a game, most arcade sessions are timed, and having to pay steadily in order to progress in a game, most of which would require multiple playthroughs to get good at, combined with control schemes that often had unwieldy button setups. Yeah, I'll admit I still prefer playing pinball in an arcade, but that's one of the few things that I have fond memories of.
Paper letters. Messages that were sent back and forth all the time between friends and family.
Provided they didn't get lost in the mail, which they sometimes did, and they arrive much slower than emails.
And finally, film photography. A circumstance that involved taking pictures with a camera and then bringing the rolls of film to a photosmith to develop.
Yeah, and they were extremely difficult to develop, hence why they aren't used anymore. I took a film photography class a few summers ago, and I know just how many things can go wrong during the development process. First, the picture itself has to be good with the right lighting, etc. Then you have to make sure the film isn't exposed to light, a difficult enough process in itself since you have to open the film canister to get the negatives out. Once the negatives are out, they have to be immersed in developing solution and then rinsed off and dried, during which the negatives could easily get wrinkled or damaged, ruining the picture. Then, if you manage to keep the negatives clean through all that, you project the image onto photo paper and then, if you're lucky, you get a clear image. Now, with all those variables that could affect how the picture could come out, is it any wonder that people switch to digital photography? I'm aware, however, that there are some who enjoy this experience, and that's what keeps film photography in business. And good for them. After taking that class, I have a new respect for people who use film photography when they have the option not to. I'm also aware that there are machines that do this, and it's not done by hand a lot anymore, but from what I can tell, the process is pretty much the same and just as easy to screw up. Now, you may be wondering why I brought all of that up. Well, it was to provide an alternate perspective on everything that Guptill just mentioned there, and to inform you that most of what he mentions here has negative aspects too. Both of which are things that Guptill almost never acknowledges in this rant.
These 4 things were really good to abide by. They involved a lot of traveling, but were simple nonetheless. Until all that changed. These 4 elements that used to be parts of life have been replaced almost entirely by these products. Items that access the information superhighway. I really don't want to sound preachy and make it sound like I am repeating what I already thought about the current World Wide Web, but when something you feel is important comes along, you need to speak.
Yes, because speaking out on pretty much the same idea you've spoken out about in all of your other rants is going to work out so well for you. It's not like it's going to be the same, oh, things aren't like they used to be and therefore they're bad spiel all over again.
Here's the deal. The one major problem about the internet that I didn't think to mention before is that in most cases, it is killing physical socialization, something we humans were meant to do daily.
Except you, because the idea of you being out and about in the real world frightens me.
With Blockbuster LLC closing every single rental store and moving everything they do to cyberspace, online gaming causing so many video arcades to go out of business, and so on, it seems to me that laziness has reached a whole new level.
Yes, because it's not like they did that as a result that it's too expensive to maintain these physical locations and too little people want to deal with all of the hassles I mentioned earlier. No, they're doing all of this because of laziness. Do you even hear yourself talk?
The way I see it, it seems to me that hundreds of people have forgotten the one simple fact that any piece of technology has the potential to stop working.
As do any of the devices used in the locations that you mentioned. Hey Guptill, you know what Blockbuster and pretty much every video store use to keep track of their inventory? Computers! And those arcade machines that you keep lauding praise upon, due to the fact that not many of them are made anymore, it's hard to get parts for them when they break down. Paper letters can be torn or the ink can smudge, and paper ages. So if you want to save those papers as opposed to digital documents, you're going to have to work to maintain those. And, well, you've already heard my spiel about film photography, so you can imagine how many things can go wrong there.
And once it stops working, you either spend lots more money to buy the same electronic object, or you play it smart and you save a lot of dough by not purchasing the same item. And power outages also play a part in electronics failures. Why am I pointing out the obvious?
Because that's what you always do? Okay, that one was too easy.
Well, to quote Undertaker Freak 1127, technology is not infallible. It's never perfect. It never lasts forever. See, if you take the time to think about it, do you really need such high-tech stuff that in the old days only the military used? No, you don't.
You know what, Guptil? I would pay money to see you try and type your college thesis on a typewriter, only using research sources you could find in the library, with no internet access whatsoever.
Heck, I used to use a regular mobile phone. Barely, but I've gotten to the point where I don't need to use one anymore because, first of all, there's plenty of payphones around the parts where I live, and secondly, I don't have to worry about people constantly calling me and sending me text messages because every time you receive or make a call, you end up spending more money than you need to.
How? It's much more convenient to have the ability to send and receive messages easily, and how the hell do you get calls or texts from your friends if you don't use a phone anymore? Oh, wait. Never mind.
And before you jump to conclusions telling me that this problem can be remedied by switching off your cell phone, picture this. Imagine if your companions were having a party, getting loaded, something awful happens to a friend, and another friend tries to inform you about the situation. If your cell phone is off, either they're asked to leave a message, or the dial tone keeps going on for infinity until they hang up. They'd be pretty unhappy, don't you think?
And if they did that, depending on your plan, you would still be charged for the people who called you. So again, what's the point?
The only people I can think of who would need something as expensive as an iPhone are important people, like a leader of a country or a fireman or policeman. Online gaming is, of course, another parasite of physical socialization.
I know I keep picking at this, but if what he acts like on the internet is anything to judge by, the good Mr. Guptil isn't going to be doing much socialization anyway.
Like I mentioned earlier, it's causing every single arcade in the world, except in Japan, to lose profit and close. It isn't just home console ports of arcade games. Do arcades need the World Wide Web to function?
Nope. But they are a lot harder to cart around and maintain than a virtual arcade.
Nope. Even though you have to pay to use a game cabinet, Xbox Live does the same thing in the web-enabled world. That means you're losing a lot of cash playing a shooter game all day long, and you're not getting out as much as you should.
Okay, first of all, is going to an arcade really more sociable than playing in an online arcade? The interaction you get is about the same as in competition with other players or co-op with them. Sure, you see them face to face, but ultimately, most arcade cabinets have poor controls, and there are modern devices that allow you to communicate with players online as well. Plus, online you get to interact with people from other arcades besides the one you're in. In a physical arcade, there's always a chance that no one will show up to play with you. And on the internet, you almost never have that problem due to how easily accessible worldwide it is.
While the PlayStation Network and Nintendo Wii's Matrix offer free service, the fact of the matter still stands. The information superhighway can suddenly go down out of the blue, and it can take days or even weeks to be restored. If you've seen my second technology rant, it's especially bad if hackers are involved. There's even people whose internet goes down all the time.
Well, problems like this, or equivalents of problems like this, existed for old-fashioned arcades too. Those arcade cabinets still need power to run, and if that goes out, then you're screwed. There's also a chance of a power surge, which, if it causes internal damage, there's almost no chance it's getting repaired, since usually arcade cabinets are pretty old to begin with. And as hard as they are to cart around, there's still a chance that, due to their rarity nowadays, arcades can be broken into and the arcade machines can be stolen. You can't steal something that has a permanent presence online.
And sure, the plan for a cyberspace blackout on March 31st was denied, yet there will always be a chance of a blackout because once again, technology isn't perfect.
And as I mentioned, there's a possibility of an electronic blackout for regular arcades.
There isn't much to say about film photography and paper letters. Digital cameras and email have almost entirely replaced these two things. They're still around, but quite rare. Practically, the only people I know who write paper letters are the poor, the Amish, prisoners, and military people away from home. And film photography, well, only about 4% of the world would like to have physical developed photos. Still, a film photo has better quality than a digital image. I would prefer to have a film photo on my wall over a pixelated and fugitively inked one.
What? Since when? It's extremely easy to get a high-quality image offline. Unless you have a bad printer, there's no reason that the image's quality should be worse than film photography. And, well, frankly, I've seen good examples of both. And due to digital enhancement of images, usually digital photography will give you a higher quality image if you know how to do it. So, really, why pay about the same for something that's more difficult to do correctly?
I myself am interested in film photography, but it won't be easy at all to find a film camera, since you'll only be able to find one on eBay, at a flea market, a yard sale, or a thrift store.
Really? Because when I took my photography class, although admittedly the cameras were provided by the instructor, I actually found some cheap film cameras at Walmart. They're still around, it's just that almost no one uses them anymore.
And for most of the world, photosmiths are extinct. The only people who really develop film these days are X-ray technicians and dentists. In short, iPhones, online gaming, what have you, with the exception of computers, are just very expensive toys.
Do I really need to go into how expensive getting an arcade cabinet would be nowadays? Compared to that, getting a new computer would be pocket change.
These are the things the companies and you think you need. And let me remind the viewers that I am talking to regular people. You know what's more important than your expensive smartphones, being glued to your seat playing a web-enabled game, and so on? Outside and inside exercise, playing an instrument, spending time with a close friend.
Who are you to dictate how everyone lives their lives? For all you know, your audience could have a fine social life and yet still be online in order to watch this video. Hey, wait a minute! Isn't it extremely hypocritical of you to make a video about how using the internet is ruining everyone's lives, and then putting it on the internet?
And of course, book reading. But even book reading is getting a little ruined too with a device called the iPad, a device that requires a battery to run, and you can use it to go online and download a book. I don't see such a big deal about heading to your local library or Barnes & Noble and picking out a physical book that requires no electricity and can last for eternity.
I would make a joke here, but let's face it, M-Skull already made it.
The same thing also applies to renting DVDs. I mean, Netflix and Blockbuster Online are okay.
What? Not 10 minutes ago you were saying that this whole closing down of Blockbuster is contributing to this so-called laziness epidemic. How do you forget something that you wrote?
But people have streamed movies and rented them off the web to the point where most, if not every rental store in America has gone out of business. Thankfully, physical DVD rental is still going thanks to Redbox kiosks and public libraries. Again, I don't see anything wrong with heading to either one and browsing around for a movie. You may argue that you'd be paying more for car gas, yet the same thing applies to the delivery people helping Netflix.
The same could be said of the people who deliver books and DVDs to the libraries and Redboxes you just mentioned. God, Guptill, the holes in your logic are big enough to drive Bigfoot through.
Besides streaming, would you rather wait for the borrowed movie to arrive at your house, or head to a store or kiosk and purchase it right away? Either way, driving is required unless you can get there on foot.
You know, paper letters are great, but you have to walk all the way to your mailbox just to put them in, and then you have to wait for the mailman to come and pick it up. Guptill, you act like everything you've described has no issues, when in reality they have issues that are comparable to all of their modern-day equivalents, yet most of the time their modern-day equivalents are more convenient and accessible. The point I'm trying to make here is, sometimes in life, things are going to become obsolete when newer, better technologies become available. It's a reality that everyone except you seems to have accepted, and the sooner you do, the less we'll have to hear of your pointless bitching.
Seriously though, this quote-unquote on-demand streaming business has got to stop. I just want the people who aren't interested in having cyberspace and mobile phones to be fresh out of luck. In a situation like this, the so-called weak should not have to make room for the strong. Having both physical and electronic interactivity is a more sensible lifestyle for people to live. And I know what most of you are thinking. You're thinking, you idiot, all this is like saying we should go back to using the telegraph and carrier pigeons instead of the telephone. Well, that kind of change was proper. The telegraph and phone both require electricity, but the phone is obviously more efficient because the telegraph sent messages through Morse code, and we obviously don't talk in Morse code. On the other hand, something like streaming films through Netflix instead of physically browsing for a movie in a store or library isn't more rewarding, it's just easy.
What? How? I don't believe this. He's actually pointing out the flaws in his own ranting, and yet he's not realizing that he is. Unbelievable. You do realize that that same argument could apply to everything you've just said, right? That change was made for the sake of convenience. So was changing everything into a digital format. It makes for not just easier communication, but more global communication. The World Wide Web is just that, worldwide. And because of that, you can meet people who you would never find by just looking around your neighborhood, watch videos from them, like I'm doing right now, buy and sell merchandise, and pretty much everything we could do locally, globally. And that is why having the internet is a good thing. Yes, there are risks, but there are similar risks that could apply locally as well, which is something that you just can't seem to understand.
Sometimes the phone service malfunctions, sometimes the internet service malfunctions, and they leave you no choice but to go an old way. All I'm saying is, there's more to life than all these nifty devices. I may use a computer that has internet, but I used it in the way that it was meant to be used. For work, certain research, or for finding something that I can't find elsewhere in the real world, and for broadcasting this message.
Yes, this message that is telling people not to use a computer, which can only be watched on a computer. Do I even need to say it at this point?
You don't need to be tethered to the internet. Expand your horizons. Like I urged earlier, go for a walk, play an instrument, read a book, go on a date with someone you like, or manually shop for something that doesn't need to be ordered online.
I have done all of those things, and I'm pretty sure quite a few members of my audience have too. The fact that you assume we're all a bunch of lazy shut-ins shows that you really haven't done enough of that so-called research you mentioned.
If it's possible in your area. That is all. Thank you for watching.
Well, that's the end of the video. You want to know what I think? I'll tell you what I think. Or I would, but I don't have to, because this clip says it for me.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Well, it appears that while I didn't need to dredge up an old Guptill video for a crack at one of the biggest lolcows ever, it seems I didn't need to. Because nothing has changed. This has the same issue as pretty much every rant Guptill has ever made, it's just uploaded more recently. Guptill cannot seem to accept the reality that literally everyone except him already has. That change is inevitable, and nothing you say will stop it from happening. If you want to, write a paper letter or take film photography, fine. No one's stopping you, and you may even end up supporting a local business. But just because you prefer it that way does not mean that everyone else is going to. Guptill, you cannot force your opinions, and especially ill-founded ones like these, on others. And the sooner you learn to deal with that, the sooner people will stop making fun of you. So long, Guptill, and I look forward to the Hardcore Kids' next video. let's just say that even though I got to say my piece on you here, well, some other people haven't finished with you yet.